Hello, hello, and welcome to the show. Today I'm going to be doing a wrap up of the 29 books that I read during the month of February. Yes, I know it is a lot. All of these books are going to be discussed further in depth in a non spoiler way when it comes to the books that I read for Buzzwordathon, which included A Puppet Scorned, Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun, Take the Lead, and If Fate Allows, as well as my video for Blackathon, which includes Clap When You Land, Stamped, Everybody Looking, This Is How We Do It, Zikora, Call Us What We Carry, Dear Justyce, Revolution in Our Time, and Felix Ever After. The other books that I read were all part of the Ice Planet Barbarian series and will have their own wrap up that is going to be completely spoiler filled recaps and an Ice Planet Barbarian series recap with spoilers video, which will be coming shortly to you. So today I'm just going to kind of give you like a one sentence summary of each of these books as well as my star rating. So let's go ahead and get the show on the road. First up, we have Barbarian's Touch, which is a sci-fi in the Ice Planet Barbarian series, and I gave this one 5 stars. This one, the main characters are Lila and Rokon. And it also has deaf representation in it. Then we have Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun, which is a mystery. This is the third book in the Finlay Donovan series. I gave it 5 stars, and it is about Finlay going with one of her friends to a cop training school to figure out if one of the cops is dirty. Then we have a DNF, which was What Rose Forgot. So I am going to give you my full thoughts on this one since it's not really in the other two videos. So the writing in this one was fine and Rose was interesting, but I couldn't tell if she was crazy. But then someone broke into her house and tried to kill her, and she remembered her husband was also murdered. She wants to find out why, but also was put into a nursing home. And put a nurse in the ICU by giving her her meds. So, yeah. I only read the first 100 pages of that book and DNF'd because I just knew it wasn't going to be more than a 3 star for me. And, yeah, but the writing was fine. Then we have Barbarian's Taming, another sci-fi in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. I gave it 5 stars. This one follows Hasten and Lila's sister Maddie from the previous book. This one has Fat Rep in it. I'm giving you very, very minimal stuff for the Ice Planet Barbarians. Just know that when it comes to Ice Planet Barbarians, it's just about a group of women who was like stolen from Earth by some bad aliens that wanted to sell them off like cattle, and be used as like sex slaves and stuff. Then they wind up having to deposit them onto this ice planet. Because they're carrying more stock than they were supposed to be. And so they abandon them on this ice planet, and then these hunky blue aliens discover them. They can't live on the planet as humans, so they have to get this kui that will allow them to be able to live because there is a toxin in the air that the kui can filter out, and it also gives them some like special healing abilities and regulates their temperature and also makes them super horny, and it chooses a mate for them to resonate with, basically meaning to procreate with. That is what that whole entire series is about. There's lots of new characters who are introduced throughout, but I can't tell you why because that spoils some things. That's why you're just getting the couple names for this one pretty much. Next up, we have Barbarian's Hart, which I gave 5 stars. This is another sci-fi in the Ice Planet Barbarians. Basically, anytime I say Barbarian in the title, it's going to be part of the Ice Planet Barbarian series. We'll just simplify it like that, okay? So yeah, I gave it 5 stars. This one is about Pashov, as well as his mated person, which is Stacy. And so you get some flashbacks in this one to when they first mated and also current day. This one deals with amnesia. Next, we have Barbarian's Hope, which I gave 5 stars as well. This one has Asha, and you also get to see her friend Claire a lot, and Hemelo. So this one does have a big trigger warning for discussions of miscarriage. Um, and it kind of is about how that forces the two people apart because of their different grieving processes and then how they come together again. Then we have Barbarian's Choice, which I gave 5 stars. So this one is with Marduk and Farley. This is the first one that we get where both characters are like Sukui, which is the blue aliens. So I liked getting to see that one. This is like several years after the first couples were resonating, because Farley was like a teenager when they first showed up. Then we move on to Barbarian's Redemption, which I gave 5 stars, and this one has Beck and Beck's mate. There's so many books, y'all. I'm having to skim my notes. I might not have wrote down Beck's mate on here. I'm not seeing it. My goodness. Let me see. It's going to take me a second. I got to look for it. Hold on. So Beck's resonant mate is Elle, and this one does have to do with a very big focus on the exploration of slavery, what it feels like to be a slave. It also has to do with trauma, and trauma responses that Ellie has, such as making herself out to be very dirty so that she's not seen as appealing, so that people don't touch her. So she has a lot of trust issues based off of the trauma that she's experienced while being an abducted human. Then we have Barbarian's Lady, which I gave 5 stars. And this one has a tall girl that's like 6'1". Her name's Kate, and her resonant mate is Hart. This one does have an injury that happens during it. You also get like the tall lady representation, which I don't normally see a lot of tall girls in fiction. When I mean tall, I mean like 5'9" or taller. Because that's taller than the average male, and you do have a different life experience being a taller than average woman, than you do being average height or smaller. It's yeah. So I'm tall. I'm 5'10". So I could definitely relate to Kate. And yeah, so she a lot of the times thinks that when Harik is making comments about her height, that he finds her to be repulsive. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things that also kind of go hand in hand when it comes to perspective of like a fat character and a perspective of a tall character, because the same thing is kind of being seen um, societally wise. it, when you're really tall or if you're overweight, you're just not seen as appealing, um, because you're not the normal standard of beauty. Um, so that does come with sometimes like bullying or unpleasant nicknames. It might come from a place where someone is not intentionally doing those things or they're not doing them maliciously, but because so much of society does make jokes or sees you as less than for not being their standard of beauty, that the reception of it is often very negative, even if you do not have those negative views of yourself. You're aware of the views that other people have of you, and it can sometimes limit opportunities that you get as well. Um, so, yeah, she feels very out of place and unwanted, because she's different from the other girls. So I really liked it. Then we have Barbarian's Rescue, which I gave 5 stars. And this one has to do with Summer and Warwick. I also really related to Summer because she is a chatterbox. She has to fill the silence or it's just very awkward for her. So she's like constantly talking. And that was definitely me for a very long time. And she kind of instantly takes a liking to Warwick because he's quiet, but he doesn't mind that she's talking. He likes that he doesn't have to come up with conversation, which is very much so the dynamic between me and my husband. So I really like this one. I also like how Summer sometimes seen as being a little bit ditzy because of how much she talks, and that can make people kind of think that she's not as smart, but she's very smart, and you get to see her using her wit in this book. Then we have Barbarian's Tease, which is 5 stars. This one follows Brooke and Toshin. Brooke is all about the sexy time. She is very sex positive, and they're put into a situation where they are being forced to do these things, and Toshin thinks that that means that they are together forever because she was willing to get it on with him, and she's like, no, we were drugged. So yeah, so some dubious consent in this one, that was outside of the control of either of the main characters, and then the aftermath of kind of defining the relationship after that. So there you go for that one. So, warnings for that. But I did really enjoy it. Then we have Barbarian's Beloved, which I also gave 5 stars. Are we seeing a theme here? Um, this one is Ariana and Zalea, and this one has anxiety rep in it. Um, and this character was always kind of seen as being very whiny, but when you understand that she has like an anxiety disorder, it makes you look at her a lot differently. This is another one of the ones where half the book is flashback and half of the book is current. Then we have Barbarian Seduction, which does the same thing with like half being flashback, half being current. This one follows Marlene, who is French, and she is very laissez-faire, and also her resonant mate, which is Zinnik. She is very sex positive and knows what she likes, and she is not afraid to express it and to tell the guy what to do because they're not used to mating with humans. They don't know everything that satisfies them, so she is willing to take him under her wing and teach him. To the benefit of the other characters around. She's also very superstitious, so that is interesting to read about. And then I believe she has a child who has a knowing sense, which another one of the male characters had a knowing sense as well. So it was nice to kind of see that come into play. Next, we have Barbarian's Treasure, and this one is Megan and Cashall. Megan feels like she needs to kind of earn her place in the tribe or whatever you want to call their community. And then she like makes a joke, and that joke gets taken as being serious, and then she's like, oh crap, like I've done everything for this tribe and now I don't know how to make them like believe me. I feel like no one's going to trust me. I kind of just want to leave now. And then Cashall, her mate, standing up for her and trying to make her understand that she does belong and that people want her to be there. So I really liked their relationship. I thought it was cute. Then we have Barbarian's Bride, which I gave 5 stars. And this one is about Nora. as well as Dagesh. And so for this one, it deals with BDSM because Nora likes it rough, but Dagesh is used to kind of seeing women as like these slightly like vulnerable, frail, need to be taken care of type beings, and the thought of laying a hand on her or like, pseudo choking her or biting or any of the other things that can come along with like rougher sexual experiences. He's like, no, 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 I'm not comfortable with this. So it has to do with them coming to a compromise when it comes to their sex life so that they can both be satisfied. But she has to explain things in a way that he can understand because he's just never been aware of this side. Um, and it's very against his way of thinking, but you get to see how they kind of ease each other in and they find a way to work it out, which I really like. I think that this is a necessary thing that needs to be talked about when it comes to romances is consent. Because even when you're in a sexual relationship, you can still have different acts that would be non-consensual. So having those discussions is necessary so that both parties are always like fully engaged and receptive to whatever activities are happening in the bedroom rather than one feeling out of place. But also being able to find where that happy medium is to where both people can be satisfied is important as well. It can't be, oh, I don't like this, so I'm not gonna come to any middle ground with you. Um, or one person being like, oh, I'm not satisfied, so I'm gonna go off and sleep with somebody else. Like, you gotta find somewhere in the middle where you can both get fulfillment without crossing your boundaries. I think that this would be a book that people who are asexual would relate to because those sort of conversations need to be had, especially if you're like an asexual person with a sexual person. And that's something that takes time and it takes understanding and it takes a lot of conversations to kind of figure out what those lines are when it comes to consent. So that's something that I relate to as an asexual person. I do have moments of being sex repulsed, so I have to kind of reiterate to my husband, like, hey, you didn't do anything, but like, don't touch me. And then moments of indifference where I'm like, okay, I'm willing. I might not get nothing from it at this point because I'm not interested, but like, hey, I know that you have needs as well. So like, I'll compromise. And even though I'm going to be like, this doesn't cross my boundary, but at the same time, I'm not like super gung ho about it. But I'll be like, I know you need that, so like I will meet you halfway, and we'll be fine. So I think it's just a healthy discussion to have with your sexual partner. All right, next I'm going to be talking about two books simultaneously, and that is Ice Planet Honeymoon and Slice of Life. Um, for some reason, I put in this that I gave them 5 stars, and that is not true. I gave them 4.5 stars. So I need to find my whiteout and correct that. So Ice Planet Honeymoon covers the like honeymoons for the couples in the first 4 books. I don't think it added much to the series. I mean, they were fine, but like, did I really get anything from it? No, not really. Um, and then the slice of life thing honestly felt like repeats from the main novels. I don't know if she just like changed the POV in them and called it something new, but it just felt like I'd already read it. So, especially 2 of the stories. So I only listened to 2 of the 4 that were in the slice of life one because I'm like, I feel like I've already read this. But like they were good. It's still good writing and everything, but it just didn't really do anything for me. So, um then we have the next book, which is This Is How We Do It, which was by Kevin Hart. This is a nonfiction kind of self-help book that gives 10 pieces of advice to like a happier life. I gave it 4 stars. I felt like it was kind of out of touch, which often can be the case when it comes to celebrities, and it was also very generic advice that he just happened to slap quirky names onto. Then we have Every Window Filled with Light. This is a Christian book with a romance element that's basically about forgiveness. I gave it 5 stars. It deals with a widowed woman, a new preacher coming to town, who is also one of the like men's leaders, and one of the guys that he has uh, under him is the guy that accidentally stabbed the main character's husband to death. And so he's like, I think you should really have a conversation with this boy. You've both been traumatized by this event, but like, if you live in anger for the rest of your life, that's all you're going to be filled with. But if you want to like be able to move forward, which she hasn't been able to do, in the 2 years since her husband's murder, then you need to talk to this boy. I think it'll give you some clarity and you'll be able to move on. And there is certain things that this preacher knows about what happened. He knows the details that she does not know. Such as the conversation that her husband had with the kid who accidentally stabbed him to death. Had with him as he was dying, which can really help her move forward. This also has a foster child that the main character takes in, who's also struggling with forgiveness and also trust issues because her mom is a drug addict and her boyfriend is a very abusive partner. And so you get to see that in that book as well. I really enjoyed it. It does have a lot of Bible verses, and it can sometimes be seen as like maybe cringy advice. Um, but I liked the way that Emma received it. I felt like was realistic and being like, I get what you're saying. I know that this is what like God says to do, but I'm not ready to do this right now. Like you need to give me some space and let me figure this stuff out on my own, which I can really respect. Then we move on to the next book, which was a horror book, and this was a puppet Scorned, which I gave 5 stars. This is by far the weirdest thing that I've ever read. It is sock puppet erotica. Yes, you heard me right. Sock puppet erotica with horror elements. Honestly, that is all you need to know in a non-spoiler way. It's like a 30-page book. Just to do yourself a favor, and if you want to read something super weird, go pick it up. Then we have Everybody Looking, which is a contemporary story about a Nigerian American woman who is going into college. Her sexual experiences, her coming into her own. It has plus size and bisexual representation. It also mentions her mother dealing with mental illness, her upbringing as a Christian, but not necessarily believing everything that she's been taught, and just kind of like learning her own things. And some negative experiences that she's had. This one does have a trigger warning for a gynecology, because she goes in and she's getting a medical exam, and then the person like calls her a good girl for having her hymen intact, which is just like not even medically sound because not everyone's hymen quote unquote breaks. So the whole like virginity testing in general just is not, it's not everyone's is the same. Like some people's can be like rigid and not very flexible, and other people's is like a scrunchie. So I've watched a video on this, okay? Like some people's is like a scrunchie. So if the sexual encounter is consensual and you're like a scrunchie and the person is able to allow you to adjust, there should not be any injury to the hymen during sexual experiences. The problem is when you have either non-consensual encounters, or when your partner is aggressive and does not care about you, and they're not listening to you and you're communicating and being like, hey, I need a second to adjust, and they're too rough, and then that's when you can get like tears and stuff like that, which is how they're able to do examinations, to determine if there was like sexual violence done on you. But in general, it's the testing for this stuff can be traumatic, and so this person is experiencing that as well. There was also an this one also had reference to incest with like a cousin. Um, so yeah, lots of trigger warnings for that one. It does not have much of a plot. It has a lot of events. It kind of felt like a nonfiction memoir. But I gave it a 4.5 star. Next, we have Zikora, which I gave 4.5 stars as well. This is a contemporary story. Zikora is a Nigerian lawyer, whose boyfriend leaves her when she tells him she's pregnant. And so the mother's there for the birth, and you get to see the birthing experience. She talks about past experiences with being pregnant. They talk about the debate on circumcision and like, is there really a reason for it? Raising the child based off of your own opinions versus just going with whatever society's view on things is, and how there's a difference between the way that Zikora thinks and her mother thinks, and kind of being able to be the adult in the situation and be like, this is my child, I get to make my own decisions. It also talks about how black women are often given worse care when it comes to pregnancy and pain management in particular. Then we move on to Call Us What We Carry, which is a nonfiction book of poetry about the COVID pandemic. So it has to do with social isolation. It has to do with certain people being unwilling to follow regulations because they feel like they're losing a part of their freedom. Uh, but really, what it came down to was the privilege that you've grown up with, um, not being used to having to follow someone else's rules, versus like things like being scared of the vaccine because of historical atrocities that have taken place against black people when it comes to medical things, and like being used as test subjects and having a distrust of government. Um, so it talks about everything surrounding COVID, um, but it's poetry. Then we move on to Dear Justice, which is a contemporary novel. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is a it is a companion novel to Dear Martin, and this one follows Justice as he is being brought to trial, um, for murder, but he did not commit the murder. However, he doesn't want to tell the truth about what happened because snitches get stitches. But not only that, but the gang that he's a part of has been taking care of his family, so he's scared of the repercussions if he were to go against the gang and say who actually committed the murder. And it brings back the main character from Dear Martin, who is a law student at a prestigious school and has connections to like well-known lawyers to be able to give Justice the representation that he needs to be able to win his case, but also understanding why he doesn't want to go against the gang, um, and also finding a way for him to possibly get out of the gang and be able to have more of the future that the character from Dear Martin has been able to have. So, yeah. Then we move on to the next book, which is Stamped. This is a nonfiction. I gave it 5 stars. So this gets into the history of racism and how it has led to the systemic issues of today. He even goes into like which historical black people are in textbooks and weren't necessarily anti-racist. They still had some racist views. He talks about the villainized movements and figures who actually did great things and the praised ones who had racist motives. It teaches the real way to be anti racist and even acknowledges his own biases going into the book, where he realized that he was not necessarily anti racist and had a ways to go. So it is an educational story. I really liked the audio narration by the author. I felt like it was just very present. Um, it it was a really good nonfiction and talking about history. I was just super engaged the entire time, which is hard for me to do with nonfiction in general. But this one definitely achieved that, and I think the narration itself had a lot to do with that engagement. So yeah, that one was 5 stars. Then we have Revolution in Our Time, which is another nonfiction. I gave this one 4.5 stars. So this book is about the formation of the Black Panthers, their tenets and contributions to the black community, how they were infiltrated by the FBI to stir up violence because they were too powerful, and how they were law abiding citizens that were demonized and transformed negatively. So, yeah, this one was very interesting. Every time that I ever heard about the Black Panthers, it was in a negative way, like they were these violent figureheads, which the today's Black Panthers are not the same as the Black Panthers historically. They're not the same people, and some of that has to do with the infiltration and the programs set up to make them look bad. Um, the FBI literally set people in there kind of undercover to make the Black Panthers look bad because they were doing good things for their communities, they were improving the education systems, they were standing up for the rights that white people had. And trying not to be seen as violent just because they were black. Like they would go places with their guns, just as a white person would, but to show that, like, hey, I'm a citizen too. I have this right as well. Why is it fearful when I do this? Um, so yeah, it was a very interesting book. I'll definitely have more to say about it in the Blackathon wrap up. Next, we have Clap When You Land. This is a contemporary story. I gave it 4.5 stars. This one has a Dominican character as well as a character who lives in the US. They both find out that they have the same dad, who was living a double life after his plane crashes shortly after 9/11. So it has to do with family, grief, and also sexuality, as one of the characters is lesbian. Then we have Felix Ever After, which is a romance. I gave this one 5 stars. Felix is trans. He's also in an art program, and his old photos were displayed, and he thinks you know who did it, so he decides to catfish this person, only to find out he didn't do it, and then they kind of fall for each other, and there's a love triangle, and then there's the whole thing of like, can I even tell this person? Um, like he intentionally manipulated this person. So it's like, can we move forward after this? So yeah, I really, really liked this book. I feel like Felix represents teens and making impulsive decisions and then regretting them afterward, but also like moving forward and learning to kind of be himself. It also has to do with exploration of gender, because even though Felix identifies as trans, he's no longer sure of where he falls within that spectrum. He knows that he's not a girl, but he doesn't necessarily identify as a man anymore. So he has to figure that out. And I really liked it. And I also liked the whole art thing that was happening. There's also discussions of privilege and wealth. So yeah, it was just an overall really good story. Then we have Take the Lead, which I gave 5 stars. This is a nonfiction by Jessica Simpson. I was honestly like floored. I was not expecting this to be any good. I kind of downloaded it as a laugh. I still remember Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey's show where she was like, tuna of the sea, is it like chicken? Basically, she talks about how she was kind of forced into making herself out to be this ditzy person who she's not actually like. Um, and the way that she was portrayed and had to portray herself. Um, but this one is not really about that, even though it does have little nods to it throughout the story. It's very, very short. This one does have trigger warnings for talking about eating disorders, sexual abuse, and exploitation as a celebrity. But overall, it's about taking the lead in your own life and not letting fear control you. And I felt like hers was very in touch, and she used really good examples that I feel like anybody can relate to. For instance, she talks about how her fear of horses derived from the fact that her cousin was killed in a freak accident involving horses, and how her daughter kind of helped her learn to quote unquote take the lead and overcome her fear. So yeah, if you want like a short 30-minute celebrity nonfiction, I would highly recommend this one. Then we have the last one, which is If the Fates Allow by Rainbow Rowell. I've read most of Rainbow Rowell's books. I haven't read some of the recent ones, so most of the old ones. But anyway, I gave this one 5 stars. This is also a story during the pandemic, and it shows how people didn't take it seriously, even within families. There would be separations of who would be following things and who wouldn't. And so this is about a girl who quarantines for 2 weeks to be able to spend the holidays with her granddad. But she's so scared of just everything about COVID. So it's kind of like being able to follow precautions, but also not lose yourself during the midst of a pandemic. So I thought it was really good. She bonds with a neighbor over Jello. It's just a romance. It's a romance. But yeah, it was good. And those are the 29 books and 1 DNF that I read during the month of February. I hope you have enjoyed this wrap up. Please let me know down below in the comments if you intend on reading any of these books. And I will see you all in my next video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with friends, and comment. If you did get to the end of this, leave me a 4-leaf clover in the comments. It's March. I want to see them clovers. And I will see y'all later. Bye. Or a rainbow. Bye.